So welcome to today's Greater Life CoffeeCast. And today I share a profoundly life-affirming experience of the health benefits of cultivating humanity. And within it, it's also a mirror for how poorly I have done this in recent years. So, yesterday I needed to arrange to borrow a hedge trimmer from one of my neighbours, and I'd borrowed it before, and I heard that she was working in her garden, so I popped round to ask the question. And I always know that she likes to chat, so I prepared to be there for a while. Told her about breaking up with my girlfriend, all these sorts of things that you do, and I was asking her about her life as well, and she was sharing how her husband was struggling with his legs, and one of her family members had been diagnosed with cancer, and she'd had to turn down a friend who she was who'd asked for help because she had so much else going on. And I really empathized with her, the amount that I've been processing emotionally and then practically having to deal with. I really empathise with her holding a boundary around saying no to helping this one friend because she had enough on her plate already. And yet I also realised that here was me literally next door, very able-bodied, with a car, and if she needed me, I could help. And so I left my mobile phone number with her, and I took her phone number as well. And really recognised for the first time just what a kind soul she is. And she said in our conversation, I never like to say no to anyone. Now, that may be an example of not the best boundaries, because no is a very important word, so that we can really honour ourselves at times. But just in the tone of her voice, I really heard how actually, she wants to be there for people. That's a real value for her. And I realised that in many ways I perhaps haven't been. And there was two things. There was some sadness in that, of recognising how long I've lived next door and haven't really made the effort to foster any kind of meaningful connection. And at the same time, in this moment, there was perhaps the seeding of some meaningful connection. And at the very least of two human beings not feeling quite so alone in the world. And then after I came back from walking the dog and going to the beach, I saw my other neighbour putting out his rubbish. Today is our bin collection day. And I popped out and asked him if it was recycling as well, because, we have 1 week on, 1 week off with recycling collection. And he said, "Oh no, it's just the bins today." And he was quite out of breath. And I said, and I knew he hadn't been well. And I said, "Oh, how are you doing? How are things?" And he says, "Oh, not good, to be honest. I'm fed up with it." And he proceeded to tell me about how he's got this big hernia that one surgeon has refused to operate on, and so he's been sent to another surgeon 2 hours away in Devon. And yet he's still recovering from pneumonia, and that's why he gets out of breath. And he was, out of breath literally, while we were talking. It took about 5 minutes for him to kind of recover his normal breathing, and he literally only had to walk from the door of his house about 20 yards to the curb where he put his rubbish out. And, I really felt for him and was just there with him. And he was explaining how, with the pneumonia and things, he was nearly a goner, were his words, and I was just empathising with him about how stressful and tough that must have been for his wife. And he was like, he really kind of acknowledged that. And again, I just said, look, I appreciate sometimes I may be a terrible neighbour. My dog may bark, or my hedge may be unruly, but I can always help, and so please do. If there's an emergency, you only need to just knock on. And, I could see that he was genuinely moved. That, again, the tone of his voice, he said, thank you, George, I really appreciate that. And the strange thing was that in connecting with both of my neighbours yesterday, in a way that was perhaps slightly deeper than I ever had before, in taking the time to acknowledge the emotional life of each other, to really see and hear where each of them was at, albeit in the midst of a 5 to 10 minute conversation. The experience was that each of us left enriched. That in my efforts just to take a bit more time to see and to hear them, that I too was seen and heard. And of course, you may be listening to this appreciating that it's no surprise that we are ultimately comprised of sound and light. That is what our physical being is made up of, right? And so no surprise, therefore, that it is a profoundly healing, it is a profoundly health benefiting action to be seen and to be heard, to see and to hear. And that, of course, this goes to the very core of what it is to cultivate, to foster, to nurture a shared humanity, a sense of interdependence. And in both the examples of my neighbours, both of them were, dealing in their own ways with either personal or, family members having very serious health conditions. And the act of just taking the time to speak to someone may not seem as powerful as chemotherapy. But there's something in my soul that knows that that is the case. That allowing someone to be seen and to be heard, to really be present for them, with them, to hold a quality of love in your field, that love is going to be experienced and felt by the other, is going to benefit the other. So today, how might you be able to carve out that extra level of presence, of connection with someone, to hold a quality of love that they can bathe in, that they can be with, and that they can feel seen and heard? Because as our world heads more and more toward a world of screens and separation, a simple conversation where someone knows they've been seen and been heard can genuinely mean the world.